They say a mother's grief never truly ends. It merely learns to breathe differently. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment my dead daughter sent me a message from beyond the grave. My name is Eleanor Whitaker. I'm 64 years old, and I've spent the last 3 years visiting a lie. Every Sunday at 2:30, I would drive my aging Vauxhall through the winding roads of Canterbury to St. Martin's Cemetery, carrying fresh white lilies, Charlotte's favorites. My daughter, my only child, had been taken from me at just 34 years old, or so I'd been told. The autumn wind bit through my wool coat that particular Sunday as I approached Charlotte's headstone, the familiar weight of grief pressing against my chest. But something was different. Already resting against the marble were fresh red roses, vibrant, expensive, certainly not the cheap supermarket bouquets I could barely afford on my widow's pension. My heart stuttered. In 3 years, no one else had ever left flowers. With trembling fingers, I reached for the small envelope tucked between the thorns. The moment I saw the handwriting on that cream-colored card, the world tilted sideways. I recognized every loop, every slant, the same handwriting that had filled birthday cards and shopping lists for 34 years. "Mom, I'm alive. Don't trust anyone." The words blurred as tears flooded my vision. My knees buckled, and I gripped the cold headstone for support. This couldn't be real. I'd identified her body. I'd buried her. I'd mourned her for 3 agonizing years, each day a fresh descent into darkness after already losing my beloved husband Thomas just 5 years before that. My hands shook violently as I turned the card over. An address in Dover was scrawled beneath a single line: "Meet me at 11:55 p.m. Come alone." The rational part of my mind screamed that this was cruel, impossible, someone's sick idea of a joke. But a mother knows her child's handwriting the way she knows her own heartbeat. This was Charlotte. My daughter was alive. I stuffed the card into my handbag, my pulse thundering in my ears. As I turned to leave, the sensation of being watched crawled up my spine like ice water. I scanned the cemetery. Rows of ancient headstones stretched beneath gnarled oak trees, their branches casting dancing shadows in the fading afternoon light. Then I saw him, a man in a dark coat, standing partially obscured behind a mausoleum about 50 yards away. The moment our eyes met, he turned and walked briskly toward the cemetery gates. My breath caught. Who was he? How long had he been watching? I hurried to my car, fumbling with my keys, constantly checking the rearview mirror. My mind raced with impossible questions. If Charlotte was alive, where had she been? Why had she let me suffer? Who had I buried? And most terrifyingly, who was I supposed to not trust? The drive home passed in a fog. I lived in a small terraced house on Whitstable Road, the same house where Charlotte had grown up, where Thomas and I had celebrated 40 years of marriage before cancer took him. I'd sold nearly everything of value after his death. His vintage watch collection worth $12,000, my mother's jewelry valued at $8,500, just to keep the house and manage the funeral expenses when Charlotte supposedly died. Now, sitting in my cramped kitchen with a cold cup of tea, staring at that impossible note, I realized my entire world had been built on a lie, and someone very dangerous wanted to keep it that way. The clock on the wall ticked toward evening. I had 7 hours until 11:55 p.m. 7 hours to decide if I was brave enough or foolish enough to meet a ghost. Before I continue with what happened that night, I'd love to know you're with me on this journey. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Your support means everything. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. I kept pulling out that card, studying Charlotte's handwriting, desperately searching for proof this wasn't some elaborate forgery. But I knew, deep in that place where a mother's intuition lives, this was real. Around 7 o'clock, as darkness settled over Canterbury, I made a decision. If I was going to meet Charlotte, I needed to understand what had happened 3 years ago. I needed to revisit the nightmare I'd tried so hard to forget. I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, something I'd avoided since Charlotte's funeral. Each step groaned under my weight, echoing through the empty house. Dust motes danced in the beam of my torch as I pushed open the attic door. The smell of old cardboard and mothballs hit me immediately. There, in the corner, sat 3 boxes labeled in my own shaky handwriting, Charlotte's things. I'd packed them away during those first dark months of grief, unable to bear seeing her belongings scattered around the house. I pulled open the first box. Photographs spilled out. Charlotte as a gap-toothed 7-year-old, Charlotte at her university graduation, Charlotte at her wedding to Marcus 5 years before she supposedly died. Marcus, my son-in-law, the man who'd stood beside me at the funeral, tears streaming down his handsome face as we lowered an empty casket into the ground. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The casket had been closed. Marcus had insisted, said the accident had been too devastating, that I shouldn't see her like that. I'd been too destroyed by grief to question it. Don't trust anyone, Charlotte's note had said. With shaking hands, I dug deeper into the boxes. Bank statements, letters, Charlotte's diary from the year before she died. I opened the diary, and Charlotte's voice seemed to leap off the pages. Marcus has been acting strange lately. Always on his phone, always secretive. Today, I found $47,000 transferred from our joint account to somewhere he won't explain. When I confronted him, he said it was an investment opportunity, but he got so angry when I pressed for details. My blood ran cold. I flipped forward through the pages. He's lying about where he goes on Tuesday nights. I followed him last week to an office building in London. There was a blonde woman. They looked very familiar. Further still, I'm scared. I found documents in his study. Life insurance policies. Mine is worth $250,000. Marcus doesn't know I saw them, but there were calculations scribbled in the margins. Why would he be calculating what he'd receive if I died? The diary ended abruptly, 2 weeks before Charlotte's supposed death. The final entry simply read, I need to tell Mom everything. Tomorrow. I can't do this alone anymore. But she'd never made it to tomorrow. The next day, Marcus had called me, his voice breaking with sobs, saying Charlotte had been in a terrible car accident. The vehicle had caught fire. The body was badly burned. Dental records confirmed it was her, except it wasn't her. I dropped the diary, my whole body trembling. Marcus had done something to Charlotte. He'd made everyone believe she was dead, collected the insurance money, $250,000, and gone on with his life. And Charlotte had been hiding, terrified, for 3 years. A floorboard creaked downstairs. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I lived alone. No one should be in my house. Moving as quietly as my arthritic knees would allow, I crept to the attic door and peered down the darkened stairwell. Another creak. Definitely footsteps. Someone was searching my house. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood frozen in the attic doorway. The footsteps below were deliberate, methodical. Someone searching room by room. Moonlight filtering through the small attic window cast long shadows across the cluttered space. I had no phone up here, no way to call for help. My mobile sat uselessly on the kitchen counter. Think, Eleanor, think. I'd lived in this house for 42 years. I knew every squeaking board, every hiding spot. Carefully, I eased myself back into the attic and closed the door, leaving it open just a crack. The old brass lock had broken years ago. Thomas had always meant to fix it. The footsteps grew louder, climbing the stairs. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I grabbed the only weapon within reach, Thomas's old cricket bat, stored among the boxes. My arthritic hands gripped it tightly as I pressed myself against the wall beside the door. The footsteps paused on the landing. Through the crack, I could see a shadow stretching across the hallway floor. Then a voice, male, cold, unfamiliar. Mrs. Whitaker, I know you're home. Your car is outside. I just want to talk. Like hell he did. People who just want to talk don't break into your home after dark. I saw you at the cemetery today, the voice continued, closer now. I saw you find the flowers. That was very unfortunate. You should have left things alone. The attic door began to open. I raised the cricket bat, my muscles screaming in protest. An arm appeared, then a shoulder, and I swung with every ounce of strength my aging body possessed. The bat connected with a sickening crack. The man howled in pain and stumbled backward. I didn't wait to see if he'd recovered. I shoved past him. He was large, dressed in black, clutching his shoulder, and ran for the stairs. My feet tangled in my own panic. I grabbed the banister just in time to stop myself from tumbling down. Behind me, the man cursed viciously and gave chase. I could hear him thundering down the stairs as I reached the ground floor. The front door. I just needed to reach the front door. My fingers fumbled with the chain lock. Behind me, heavy footsteps. I yanked the door open and burst into the street, screaming at the top of my lungs. "Help! Someone help me!" Lights flicked on in neighboring houses. Mrs. Patterson from number 14 appeared in her doorway, mobile phone already in hand. The man in black appeared in my doorway, saw the gathering witnesses, and made a split-second decision. He turned and ran out my back door instead. "Eleanor! What on earth?" Mrs. Patterson rushed over, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders. I was shaking so violently I could barely stand. "Call the police," I gasped. "Someone broke into my house." Within 15 minutes, 2 police constables arrived. A young woman with kind eyes and an older man who looked distinctly skeptical as I recounted my story. They searched my house thoroughly. The back door had been jimmied open, they confirmed, but nothing appeared to be stolen. "Do you have any idea who might have done this, Mrs. Whitaker?" the female officer asked gently. I wanted desperately to tell them everything, about Charlotte, about Marcus, about the impossible note. But Charlotte's message echoed in my mind. "Don't trust anyone. Come alone." "No," I lied, hating myself for it. "I can't imagine." The skeptical officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "You're sure nothing is missing? Sometimes elderly people—" "I'm 64, not senile," I snapped. "Someone broke into my home and chased me into the street. There are witnesses." They took statements from Mrs. Patterson and 2 other neighbors who'd heard my screams. Eventually they left, promising increased patrols in the area. Fat lot of good that would do. Mrs. Patterson insisted I stay at her house for the night, but I declined. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to meet Charlotte at 11:55. The clock now read 9:47 p.m., just over 2 hours. After everyone left and I'd secured my doors and windows as best I could, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea I couldn't drink. My hands were still shaking. Charlotte's diary lay on the table before me. Marcus had tried to kill her. I was certain now. But Charlotte had somehow escaped, faked her own death, or he'd faked it, and she'd been hiding ever since. But from what? From whom? And why reach out now after 3 years of letting me grieve? The man who'd broken into my house wasn't Marcus. I'd have recognized my own son-in-law. Someone else was involved. Someone dangerous enough to break into an old woman's home and threaten her. I looked at the address on Charlotte's note. A warehouse district in Dover, about 25 miles away. I'd need to leave within the hour to make it by 11:55. This was madness. I should call the police back, tell them everything. But what if Charlotte was in danger? What if involving the authorities put her at greater risk? I thought of Thomas, my steady, brave Thomas. What would he do? I knew the answer already. He'd go. He'd move heaven and earth to protect our daughter. At 10:30 p.m., I grabbed my handbag, Charlotte's diary, and Thomas's cricket bat. I was going to meet my dead daughter, and God help anyone who tried to stop me. The motorway stretched before me like a ribbon of darkness, broken only by occasional streetlights and the red taillights of lorries rumbling toward the coast. My ancient Vauxhall rattled and wheezed as I pushed it to 60 miles per hour, faster than I'd driven in years. The cricket bat lay on the passenger seat beside me, a ridiculous but comforting presence. Every pair of headlights in my rearview mirror made my heart jump. Was I being followed? The man from my house could have a car, could be tracking me right now. I'd thought about taking a taxi, but how could I explain to a driver why a 64-year-old woman needed to go to an abandoned warehouse district at midnight? My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. The events of the past 12 hours played on repeat in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. This morning, I'd been Eleanor Whitaker, tragic widow and grieving mother, living a quiet life of remembrance and loss. Now I was, what? A detective? A vigilante? A foolish old woman driving toward danger? The sat-nav on my phone directed me off the motorway and into Dover's industrial outskirts. The area grew increasingly desolate. Warehouses with broken windows, empty car parks littered with rubbish, streets with more potholes than pavement. This was not the Dover of tourist brochures and ferry terminals. This was where the city went to rot. In 500 yards, turn left, the sat-nav announced in its cheerful, oblivious voice. I turned onto a narrow road lined with chain-link fences. Weeds grew through cracks in the pavement. A single streetlight flickered intermittently, casting strobing shadows. The address Charlotte had written led to a large warehouse at the end of a dead-end street. Its windows were dark, its metal siding covered in graffiti. I parked across the street, killed the engine, and checked my phone. 11:52 p.m. 3 minutes early. The silence was oppressive. No traffic sounds, no voices. Nothing but the distant crash of waves against Dover's famous white cliffs. I clutched the cricket bat and forced myself to open the car door. The October wind cut through my coat immediately, carrying the smell of salt water and rust. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to call the police, to do anything but walk toward that dark warehouse. But somewhere inside, Charlotte was waiting. My daughter, my baby girl who I'd buried, or thought I'd buried, 3 years ago. I crossed the street on unsteady legs. A small door beside the warehouse's main loading bay stood slightly ajar. My pulse thundered in my ears as I pushed it open. "Charlotte!" My voice echoed in the darkness. A light clicked on deep inside the warehouse, then another and another. A path of illumination led through the cavernous space toward a small office at the far end. The warehouse was mostly empty, containing only rusted machinery and stacks of rotting pallets. I followed the lights, my cricket bat raised, my breathing rapid and shallow. Each step felt like walking through water. The office door ahead was closed, but light leaked from under it. I reached for the handle. The door flew open before I could touch it, and there she was, Charlotte. My daughter stood before me, older than I remembered, thinner, her dark hair now short and streaked with premature gray. But her eyes, those blue eyes so like her father's, were unmistakably hers. "Mom," she whispered, and burst into tears. I dropped the cricket bat. It clattered on the concrete floor as I pulled her into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. She was real, solid, warm, alive. My baby, I kept repeating, unable to form any other words. We stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. 2 women crying in an abandoned warehouse, 3 years of grief and confusion and terror pouring out of us. Finally, Charlotte pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted you to suffer." "What happened?" I choked out. "Charlotte, what happened? I buried you. There was a funeral. Marcus said—" Her face hardened at the mention of her husband's name. "Marcus tried to kill me," she said flatly, "and he very nearly succeeded." She led me into the small office, which contained only a folding table, 2 chairs, and a laptop computer. A sleeping bag lay rolled in the corner. She'd been living here, I realized with horror. My daughter had been living in this cold, abandoned place. "Sit down, Mum. I need to tell you everything, and we don't have much time. They'll have followed you, even though I told you to come alone. We probably have 30 minutes at most." "Who'll have followed me?" "Charlotte, I don't understand any of this." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she opened the laptop. 3 years ago, I discovered that Marcus wasn't just having an affair. He was involved in something much worse, a money laundering operation run by some very dangerous people. He'd been using our business accounts to move over $2 million in illegal funds. My mouth fell open. £2 million? When I confronted him, he panicked. He couldn't let me go to the police. I knew too much. So he made a deal with his partners. They'd help him stage my death. He'd collect the life insurance, $250,000, and split it with them as payment for their help and continued silence. Charlotte's hands shook as she pulled up files on the laptop, her fingers flying across the keys with practiced urgency. On the day I supposedly died, Marcus put sleeping pills in my morning coffee. When I woke up, I was in a van, hands bound, heading toward a remote location outside Canterbury. I couldn't breathe. The warehouse felt like it was closing in around me. "How did you escape?" "I didn't. Not immediately. They kept me in a basement for 3 days while they arranged everything, found someone desperate enough to sell their identity, someone who matched my general description. A homeless woman named Sarah Mitchell. She was an addict, Mum. They gave her enough drugs to kill her, then staged the car accident with her body inside. Bile rose in my throat. Dear God. I heard them talking about it. About how you'd identified the body, except you hadn't. Not really. You'd looked at dental records they'd falsified, believed what Marcus told you because why wouldn't you? He was your son-in-law. You trusted him. The weight of that trust, of my own naivety, crushed down on me. But how did you get away? Charlotte's eyes grew distant. On the 4th night, there was only one guard, a man named Victor. He was new to the operation, younger than the others. I talked to him for hours, told him about you, about Dad, about my childhood. I made myself human to him. And when he wasn't paying attention, I grabbed a piece of broken pipe and— She paused, swallowing hard. I did what I had to do to survive. I reached across the table and gripped her hand. It was ice cold. I had no phone, no money, no identification. I was legally dead. I couldn't go to the police. Marcus's partners included a detective inspector named Graham Holloway. He was the one who'd handled my case, who'd validated the evidence, who'd closed the investigation quickly and quietly. Holloway? I remembered him vaguely. A middle-aged man with a sympathetic smile who'd assured me they'd done everything possible. He's been laundering money through fake charity organizations for years, Mom. He's the one who arranged for Sarah Mitchell's dental records to be swapped with mine. When I escaped, I knew if I surfaced, they'd kill me, and probably you too, to cover their tracks. So you've been hiding for 3 years? The thought of my daughter, alone and terrified, living in places like this warehouse, made my heart shatter all over again. I've been gathering evidence, Charlotte corrected, turning the laptop toward me. The screen showed spreadsheets, photographs, bank statements, recorded conversations. Every transaction, every player in the network, every corrupt official they've bought. I've documented everything. For 3 years, I've been building an airtight case. My mind reeled. Why not take it to the authorities? Surely there's someone you can trust. I needed more than Marcus and Holloway. The network goes higher than you can imagine. Politicians, businessmen, other police officers. If I'd acted too soon, they'd have buried the evidence and me with it. But now, she smiled grimly. Now I have enough to bring down the entire operation. Over $15 million in laundered money traced through dozens of accounts. 23 people implicated, including 2 MPs and 5 members of various police forces. I stared at the screen, overwhelmed. What are you going to do? I have a contact, a journalist named Sarah Chen at The Guardian. She's been investigating similar cases for years. Tomorrow morning, she's publishing everything, and simultaneously, copies of all evidence are going to the National Crime Agency, MI5, and 3 different law firms. By noon tomorrow, this will be the biggest financial crime story in the UK. And you? I whispered. What happens to you? Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. I get my life back, Mum. I get to stop hiding. I get to come home. A sound outside the warehouse made us both freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps. Charlotte's face went white. They're here. I knew they would be, but I'd hoped we'd have more time. She grabbed a USB drive from the table and pressed it into my hands. This is a backup of everything. If something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you, I said fiercely, gripping the cricket bat. I just got you back. The warehouse's main lights suddenly blazed on, flooding the space with harsh fluorescent light. Through the office's grimy window, I could see men fanning out across the warehouse floor. 5 of them, all dressed in dark clothing, and leading them, looking every bit the respectable businessman in his expensive suit, was Marcus. My son-in-law's handsome face was twisted with fury as he spotted us through the window. "Charlotte!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "Come out! It's over." Charlotte grabbed my arm. "There's a back exit through the storage room. You have to go, Mom. Get that drive to Sarah Chen. Her number is on the sticky note attached. Promise me. I'm not leaving you. You have to." She pushed me toward a door at the back of the office. "I knew this might happen. I have my own backup plan. But that evidence is everything. If they get it, if they destroy it, all of this has been for nothing. Sarah Mitchell's death means nothing. My 3 years in hiding mean nothing. Please, Mum, please." Through the window, Marcus and his men were advancing toward the office. I could see one of them drawing a gun from his jacket. My daughter's blue eyes, Thomas's eyes, bored into mine. "I love you, Mum. I've always loved you. Now run." She shoved me through the door into a dark storage room and slammed it behind me. I heard her lock it from the other side. "Charlotte!" I screamed, pounding on the door. "Go!" Her muffled voice came back. "I'll find you. I promise. Just go." The sound of splintering wood came from the office. They were breaking down the main door. I had seconds to decide, stay and watch my daughter die, or trust her and run. I ran. The storage room was pitch black and cluttered with debris. I stumbled forward, hands outstretched, the USB drive clutched in my fist, and my handbag somehow still slung across my chest. Behind me, muffled shouts and crashing sounds echoed through the warehouse. They'd reached the office. My shin collided painfully with something metal. I bit back a cry and felt my way around it. There, a strip of dim light beneath what had to be the exit door. I lurched toward it, threw my weight against the push bar, and burst out into a narrow alley behind the warehouse. The cold October air hit my face like a slap. I ran, something I hadn't done in years, down the alley toward the street where I'd parked. My knees screamed in protest, my chest burned, but terror drove me forward. Behind me, I heard the exit door bang open. "There! The old woman!" a male voice shouted. Footsteps pounded after me. I reached the street and saw my Vauxhall across the road. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice before managing to unlock the door. An engine roared behind me. A black SUV was pulling out from behind the warehouse. I threw myself into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and for one horrifying moment, the engine sputtered and failed. "Please, please, please," I begged, turning the key again. The Vauxhall coughed to life. I slammed it into gear and floored the accelerator just as the SUV screeched around the corner. The old car lurched forward with a protest of grinding gears. In my rearview mirror, the SUV was gaining fast, its headlights filling my mirror with blinding light. I had no plan, no destination except away. The sat-nav had gone dark. I careened through the industrial district, taking turns at random, praying I'd find a main road. Other cars, witnesses, anything. My pursuer stayed close, occasionally bumping my rear fender hard enough to make the steering wheel jerk in my hands. Ahead, I saw lights, a roundabout leading toward Dover town center. I took it at 40 miles per hour, far too fast, feeling the Vauxhall's tires skid. Somehow I maintained control and shot down a wider street lined with closed shops and dark restaurants. A few cars were parked along the curb. Civilization, at last. The SUV was still behind me, but hanging back now. There were other vehicles around, a few pedestrians stumbling home from the pubs. They couldn't force me off the road here without witnesses. I needed to get to London, to the Guardian offices, to this Sarah Chen person. Charlotte's sticky note was in my coat pocket along with the USB drive. With trembling hands, I fished out my phone and tried to dial the number while driving. The phone slipped from my grasp and fell into the passenger footwell. Damn it. I couldn't stop to retrieve it. The SUV was still following, maintaining a distance of about 3 car lengths. Signs for the A2 toward London appeared. The motorway, if I could reach it, I'd have witnesses, other traffic, maybe even police patrols. I merged onto the slip road, pushing the Vauxhall as fast as it would go. The speedometer needle crept toward 70, then 75. The old car shuddered and rattled alarmingly. The SUV matched my speed effortlessly. We raced through the darkness, 2 vehicles locked in a deadly chase. My arms ached from gripping the wheel. My eyes burned from staring at the road. I'd been awake for over 20 hours, running on pure adrenaline and maternal fury. A lorry appeared ahead, moving slowly in the left lane. I had a split-second decision: try to pass it on the right, potentially cutting off the SUV, or stay behind it and lose speed. I jerked the wheel right, pushing the Vauxhall into the outside lane. The SUV anticipated my move and accelerated, trying to box me in. We were side by side now, racing at 80 miles per hour. I could see the driver through his window, a bald man with a scar across his jaw, his face set in grim determination. He swerved toward me, trying to force me off the road. I slammed on my brakes. The Vauxhall's ancient brake system groaned but held. The SUV shot past me, and I immediately cut back into the left lane behind the lorry. The SUV's brake lights flared as it tried to slow down, but momentum carried it forward. A gap opened between us, 50 yards, then 75. That's when I saw the service station ahead, brightly lit and promising safety. I took the exit at the last possible second, my tires squealing. The SUV tried to follow, but was going too fast and missed the exit. I watched in my rearview mirror as it continued down the motorway, its brake lights growing smaller. I pulled into the service station car park and killed the engine, my whole body shaking violently. Other cars were parked here, and through the windows of the building, I could see people. Tired travelers getting coffee, a family with small children eating chips. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a 64-year-old woman had just fled for her life. I had maybe 5 minutes before the SUV turned around and came back. I retrieved my phone from the footwell and dialed the number on Charlotte's sticky note with trembling fingers. It rang 4 times before a woman answered, voice thick with sleep. Hello? Is this Sarah Chen? From The Guardian? Who is this? Do you know what time it is? My name is Eleanor Whitaker. I'm Charlotte Whitaker's mother. Charlotte is alive, and I have evidence that will bring down a money laundering network worth over 15 million. But there are men trying to kill me right now, and I need help. There was a brief pause. Then Sarah Chen's voice came back, sharp and alert. Where are you? Sarah Chen's voice remained steady as I gasped out my location. Stay in public areas with witnesses. I'm in London. I can be there in 90 minutes. Find somewhere crowded and visible. Do you have the evidence with you? Yes, on a USB drive. But my daughter, Charlotte, is still at the warehouse with them. They had guns. We have to call the police. No! Sarah's sharp interruption startled me. Mrs. Whitaker, Charlotte briefed me on everything. D.I. Holloway and at least 3 other officers are compromised. If you call the local police, you're likely to get someone on Marcus's payroll. We need to be smart about this. My hands tightened around the phone. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to go back, to help Charlotte. She could be dying right now. Charlotte has a plan. She's been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Trust her, Mrs. Whitaker. Trust that your daughter knows what she's doing. Right now, the most important thing is keeping that evidence safe. Without it, Charlotte's been hiding for nothing. I closed my eyes, forcing down panic. Sarah was right. Charlotte had literally shoved me out a door to protect this evidence. I couldn't let her sacrifice be meaningless. There's a 24-hour supermarket inside the service station, I said, spotting it through the windscreen. I'll wait there. Good. Stay visible. Stay around people. I'm leaving now. And Mrs. Whitaker, don't trust anyone who approaches you, no matter how official they seem. I'll identify myself by mentioning Charlotte's father's name. Do you understand? Thomas, I whispered. His name was Thomas. Exactly. 90 minutes. You can do this. She hung up. I sat in my car for another moment, gathering what little courage I had left, then grabbed my handbag and headed for the supermarket. The automatic doors whooshed open, and blessed warmth enveloped me. A tired-looking clerk at the till glanced up, then away, uninterested. I wandered the aisles like a ghost, pretending to shop while constantly watching the doors. Every person who entered made my heart jump. A young couple arguing about sandwich fillings, a lorry driver buying energy drinks, a woman my age selecting ready meals, her face lined with exhaustion. 30 minutes passed, 45. I bought a sandwich I couldn't eat, and tea I couldn't drink, just to have a reason to sit in the small cafe area with a clear view of the entrance. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in my coat pocket. The woman who'd been buying ready meals sat down 2 tables away. She smiled at me, a sad, understanding smile that said we were 2 lonely women awake at ungodly hours. I nodded back politely. Terrible night to be out, she said conversationally. Car trouble? Everything in me went on alert. Was this innocent small talk or something more sinister? Yes, something like that, I replied carefully. Where are you headed? London. My daughter lives there. Not entirely a lie. What a coincidence. So am I. Perhaps we could share the drive. The roads are so dangerous this time of night, especially for women our age. The hair on my neck stood up. She was being too friendly, too interested. I glanced toward the door. Still no sign of Sarah Chen. That's very kind, but I'm waiting for someone, I said firmly. The woman's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. Are you sure? It's nearly 1 in the morning. Are you certain they're coming? I stood abruptly, grabbing my handbag. Excuse me, I need to use the ladies. I walked quickly toward the toilets at the back of the supermarket, my pulse racing. I risked a glance back. The woman was on her phone, speaking urgently. Definitely not innocent. The ladies' room was empty. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Should I call Sarah back? Call the police and risk getting a corrupt officer? I was trapped. A sound made me freeze. The bathroom door opening, footsteps approaching. Multiple sets of footsteps. Through the gap at the bottom of the stall door, I could see 2 pairs of shoes. Women's shoes. Mrs. Whitaker? A different voice this time, younger. We know you're in here. Please come out. We're not going to hurt you. We just want the USB drive Charlotte gave you. I didn't breathe, didn't move. We know about Sarah Chen. We know you called her, but she's not going to make it in time. There's been an accident on the M20. Terrible traffic. Even if she does arrive, what can one journalist do against all of us? The shoes moved closer to my stall. A hand appeared over the door, reaching for the lock. I clutched my handbag like a shield, my mind racing. Inside the bag, the cricket bat was in the car, but I had my keys, my phone, a heavy torch I always carried. The lock began to turn. I made a decision. I flung open the stall door with all my strength, slamming it into the woman outside. She stumbled back with a cry of pain. The second woman lunged for me, but I was already moving, years of suppressed rage and terror fueling me. I swung my handbag with the heavy torch inside, catching her across the temple. Both women were down, not unconscious, but dazed. I ran from the bathroom, past the startled clerk, toward the exit. Behind me, shouts erupted. The service station's car park was brighter than the warehouse, but still full of shadows. My Vauxhall was 30 yards away. I ran for it, fumbling with my keys. A car screeched into the car park, the black SUV from earlier, cutting off my escape route. The bald, scarred man jumped out, blocking my path to my car. But then another car appeared, a silver Toyota driving fast. It skidded to a stop between me and the SUV, and a slim Chinese woman in her 30s leaped out. "Mrs. Whitaker, I'm Sarah Chen. Thomas would be proud of how brave you've been. Get in." I dove into the passenger seat. Sarah was already reversing, spinning the wheel. The SUV tried to block us, but Sarah was a far better driver than I'd ever been. She executed a perfect J-turn and shot toward the motorway exit. In seconds, we were back on the A2, racing toward London with the SUV in pursuit. But this time, I wasn't alone. Sarah Chen drove like someone who'd done this before. Smooth, confident, constantly checking mirrors. "Seatbelt," she commanded, and I fumbled to comply. The USB drive felt slippery with my nervous sweat as I clutched it. "Charlotte?" I asked desperately. "Have you heard from her?" "She texted me 40 minutes ago. She's safe, that's all I know." Sarah's eyes never left the road. "She has her own escape route planned. Your daughter is remarkably resourceful, Mrs. Whitaker." The SUV was still behind us, but Sarah maintained a steady lead. We passed through Gravesend, then entered the southeastern outskirts of London as the city's orange glow appeared on the horizon. More traffic appeared around us, night lorries, taxis, people living the city's nocturnal rhythm. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Guardian headquarters in King's Cross. We'll upload everything to secure servers, distribute copies to multiple agencies simultaneously, and publish online before Marcus's people can stop us. Once it's public, there's no covering it up." "But surely they'll try to stop us from reaching the office." Sarah smiled grimly. "I have friends waiting there. Security, lawyers, other journalists. We've been preparing for this moment since Charlotte first contacted me 6 months ago." 6 months. Charlotte had been planning this for 6 months and never told me. The betrayal stung, even though I understood why. I'd been a security risk, my grief too obvious, my position too vulnerable. We crossed the Thames as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. I checked the clock. 4:47 a.m. In 12 hours, I'd gone from a grieving mother visiting a grave to a woman fleeing assassins with evidence of a multi-million-pound criminal conspiracy. The SUV had fallen back, disappearing into London's traffic. Sarah noticed too. "They're regrouping, probably calling ahead to set up roadblocks or intercept us at the office. We need to move fast." She pulled her phone from a dashboard mount and made a call using the car's hands-free system. "James, we're 20 minutes out. Is everything ready?" A pause. "Good. Tell the legal team to have the documentation prepared. The moment we walk in, we publish." King's Cross was coming alive as early commuters began their day. Sarah navigated through streets I didn't recognize, finally pulling into an underground car park beneath a modern glass and steel building. Security barriers lifted as she showed credentials to cameras. "This is it," she said, killing the engine. "Once we get inside, you're safe. Are you ready?" I looked down at the USB drive, such a small thing to contain so much destruction and hope. "Will this really work? Will it be enough?" "Mrs. Whitaker, what you're holding documents, £15 million in laundered money, implicates 23 people, including sitting MPs and police officers, and proves that your daughter's murder was faked to cover up fraud and attempted homicide. When this goes public in," she checked her watch, "approximately 2 hours, it will be the biggest financial crime story of the year. So yes, it will be enough." We took a service lift to the 3rd floor, where a small team was waiting. 3 other journalists, 2 lawyers, and a security guard who looked more like a bodyguard. They'd set up a war room of sorts. Multiple computers, printers, documents spread across tables. "This is Eleanor Whitaker, Charlotte's mother," Sarah announced. "She has the evidence." I handed over the USB drive with trembling fingers. One of the journalists, a young man with glasses, immediately inserted it into an isolated computer system, encrypting and backing up to multiple cloud servers now. "Even if they raid this building, they can't stop it." Sarah guided me to a chair. "We need you to give a statement. Everything that happened tonight, everything Charlotte told you. Can you do that?" For the next hour, I talked. They recorded everything, asking clarifying questions, cross-referencing my account with Charlotte's earlier testimony. I told them about Marcus's threats, about Sarah Mitchell's murder, about D.I. Holloway's corruption. I showed them Charlotte's diary with its damning entries. Around me, the team worked with impressive efficiency. The journalists crafted their article, fact-checking every claim. The lawyers prepared documentation for the National Crime Agency, MI5, and the Crown Prosecution Service. Someone brought me tea and toast, which I devoured. I hadn't realized how famished I was. At 6:15 a.m., Sarah's phone rang. She stepped away to answer, and I watched her face go through several emotions: surprise, concern, then something like triumph. When she returned, she was smiling. That was Charlotte. "She's in custody, protective custody. She walked into New Scotland Yard 3 hours ago with her own copies of evidence and surrendered herself to officers she'd vetted as clean. Marcus and 4 of his associates have been arrested. D.I. Holloway is currently being detained for questioning." My legs nearly gave out. "She's really safe? Truly safe?" "Under guard at a secure location. She says she'll call you herself within the hour, but she wanted you to know she's okay." Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "Your daughter orchestrated this entire thing, Mrs. Whitaker. She played them. Let them chase you. Let them think you were the vulnerable target, while she took all her evidence directly to the source. She used herself as bait to draw out all the players and document their actions tonight." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "That reckless girl, that brilliant woman," Sarah corrected gently. "She saved not just her own life, but potentially dozens of others. This network was planning to expand. Charlotte's evidence stops it cold." At 7:30 a.m., the article went live on The Guardian's website. I watched the screen as it published. "The Woman Who Rose from the Dead: How Charlotte Whitaker Exposed a $15 million Money Laundering Network." Sarah's phone began ringing immediately. Other news agencies, police officials, politicians demanding comment. The story was exploding across social media. Within an hour, it was trending nationally. And then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered with shaking hands. "Mum?" Charlotte's voice broke something inside me. I sobbed openly, unable to form words. "I'm so sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry for everything, for the grief, for the secrets, for putting you through tonight. But it's over now. It's finally over." "When can I see you?" I managed to gasp out. "Soon. They're debriefing me, but the officers here say probably by tonight. There's a safe house in North London. They'll bring you there. I love you so much. Your father would be so proud of you. So incredibly proud." "I know, Mum. I felt him with me through all of this. Tell me, do you still have his cricket bat?" Despite everything, I laughed. "I left it in the warehouse, but I gave several people good whacks with my handbag tonight. He'd approve." "That's my mum," Charlotte said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'll see you soon. I promise. No more hiding. No more secrets." The safe house in Islington was nothing like I'd imagined. Not some fortress, but an ordinary terraced home on a quiet street, distinguished only by the unmarked police car parked outside. They brought me there late that afternoon, after hours of statements and documentation at Guardian headquarters. I was exhausted beyond measure, running on fumes and the desperate need to hold my daughter again. A female protection officer named D.S. Angela Williams met me at the door. She was perhaps 40, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Mrs. Whitaker, Charlotte arrived 20 minutes ago. She's in the sitting room. Take all the time you need." I walked through the narrow hallway on legs that felt like water, and there, sitting on a worn sofa with a cup of tea, was my daughter. She looked up, and for a moment we both froze, as if confirming once more that this was real, not some cruel dream. Then we were in each other's arms again, crying and laughing simultaneously. D.S. Williams discreetly closed the door, giving us privacy. "Let me look at you," I said finally, pulling back to study Charlotte's face. She was so much thinner than I remembered, with new lines around her eyes and mouth. 3 years of stress had aged her, hardened her, but she was alive, wonderfully, impossibly alive. I know I look terrible, Charlotte said with a watery laugh. Living in abandoned buildings and dyeing my hair every few weeks isn't exactly a beauty regimen. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I cupped her face in my hands. Don't you ever, ever do anything like this to me again. I won't. I promise. No more secrets. She took my hands in hers. Mum, I need to explain everything properly. Why I stayed away so long, why I didn't contact you until now. We sat together on the sofa, and Charlotte told me the full story. The years of gathering evidence, moving from place to place, always one step ahead of Marcus's network. The times she'd nearly been caught. The moment 6 months ago when she'd finally accumulated enough proof and contacted Sarah Chen. I wanted to come home so many times, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'd stand outside our house at night, watching you through the windows. I saw you at the cemetery on my birthday last year. You brought those ridiculous stuffed animals. Do you remember? The ones we used to collect when I was little? I did remember. I'd bought a small bear holding a heart, placed it by the headstone like an offering to a child's grave. I thought you'd want them. I waited until you left, then I went and took the bear. I've kept it with me everywhere. It made me feel less alone. She pulled the small bear from her jacket pocket, worn and dirty now, but unmistakably the one I'd left. We held each other and cried for the 3 years we'd lost, for the mother and daughter relationship that had been stolen from us by Marcus's greed and evil. Eventually, D.S. Williams brought us more tea and biscuits. I hate to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to know. Marcus Sheffield and Graham Holloway have both been formally charged. Murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and about 15 other charges. The Crown Prosecution Service is calling it one of the most comprehensive criminal cases they've seen in years. What about the others? Charlotte asked. Victor, the man who helped stage my death? The MPs who were involved? Arrests are happening across the country. The evidence you provided was so thorough that 21 people are currently in custody. 2 MPs have resigned. 3 more are under investigation. D.S. Williams smiled. You've created quite the earthquake, Miss Whitaker. Over the next few days, as we remained in the safe house, the full extent of the network's collapse became clear. The Guardian published follow-up articles daily. Other news agencies picked up the story. It dominated headlines. The 3-year con, inside the 15 million money laundering network. Dead woman walking, Charlotte Whitaker's extraordinary investigation. How corruption reached the highest levels. MPs and police implicated in fraud case. The financial details were staggering. Marcus had been laundering money for a drug trafficking organization, moving funds through fake businesses and charitable foundations. The $250,000 life insurance payment had been just a bonus. His real payout would have been $1.8 million over 5 years for his services. D.I. Holloway had received over $400,000 in bribes to falsify evidence, close investigations prematurely, and provide inside information on police operations. His career was finished, his pension gone, his reputation destroyed utterly. But the detail that haunted me most was learning about Sarah Mitchell, the homeless woman whose body had been in that coffin I'd wept over. Charlotte had managed to track down Sarah's sister, a woman named Jennifer who'd been searching for her sibling for years. They met at the safe house, 2 women bound by tragedy. I'm so sorry, Charlotte told Jennifer through tears. Your sister died because of me. Because Marcus needed a body, and she was vulnerable. Jennifer, a care worker with 3 children, had taken Charlotte's hands. My sister died because she was exploited by monsters. You've brought those monsters to justice. You've given Sarah meaning in death that her addiction kept her from finding in life. Don't carry guilt for their evil. I'd cried watching them embrace. 2 women who'd each lost years to Marcus's cruelty, finding solace in each other. On the 5th day, we learned that Marcus had tried to negotiate a plea deal, offering to testify against the others in exchange for a reduced sentence. The Crown Prosecution Service rejected it outright. With Charlotte's evidence, they didn't need his testimony. He would face every charge, every consequence. Good, Charlotte said fiercely when we heard. I want him to rot in prison. I want him to feel 1 fraction of the fear and isolation I felt for 3 years. He will, D.S. Williams assured us. He's looking at life imprisonment. He'll be an old man before he sees freedom again, if ever. The financial aspects of justice were equally satisfying. The $250,000 Marcus had claimed from my daughter's life insurance was being recovered and would be returned. to Charlotte, who was legally alive again. Additionally, the criminal assets confiscation would likely yield several £1,000,000 to be distributed among victims and law enforcement. Charlotte was also entitled to rewards from the National Crime Agency, potentially up to $500,000, for information leading to the arrest and conviction of major criminals. "I don't want their blood money," Charlotte said when her lawyer explained. "Give it to homeless charities in Sarah Mitchell's name. Give it to organizations fighting corruption. I just want my life back." But the lawyer was firm. "Miss Whitaker, you've been financially devastated for 3 years. You'll need money to rebuild, housing, therapy, legal fees to reclaim your identity fully. This isn't blood money. This is compensation for the life they stole from you." 6 weeks later, on a crisp December afternoon, Charlotte and I stood together outside our house on Whitstable Road. The prosecution had agreed she no longer needed protection. Marcus and his associates were securely held, awaiting trial, and the network was thoroughly dismantled. Charlotte stared at the familiar blue door, her hand trembling in mine. "I haven't been home in 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days, she whispered. "I counted every single one." I squeezed her hand. "Welcome home, my darling girl." Inside, everything was as it had been, or almost everything. I'd taken down the memorial photographs I'd displayed after Charlotte's death, unable to bear them once I knew the truth. The house felt warmer somehow, more alive, as Charlotte walked through it, touching familiar objects. "My books," she said, running her fingers along the shelf in what had been her childhood bedroom. "My ridiculous collection of ceramic frogs. That awful painting I did in art class that you insisted on framing." She turned to me, tears streaming. "You kept everything." "Of course I did. This is your home. It will always be your home." We spent that evening on the sofa, sharing a bottle of wine and going through photo albums, not dwelling on the lost years, but celebrating the ones we'd had and the ones we'd now have again. Charlotte was slowly rebuilding her life. She'd reclaimed her identity legally, started therapy to process her trauma, and began looking for a new flat of her own. "I love being here with you, Mum," she said, "but I need my own space eventually. I need to prove to myself I can have a normal life again." "I understand, but for now, stay as long as you like. We have years of Sunday roasts to catch up on." The trial was scheduled for the following spring. Charlotte would have to testify, relive everything publicly, but she was ready. She'd spent 3 years preparing for justice, and now she would see it through. Marcus's assets had been frozen: the large house in Canterbury's most expensive neighborhood, the luxury cars, the investment portfolios, all purchased with laundered money. Charlotte's lawyers were helping her file civil suits to recover the money she'd contributed to their life together, the $47,000 he'd stolen from their joint account, compensation for her suffering. "I don't care about the money," she told me repeatedly. "I just want to make sure he has nothing, that he loses everything he valued." But I cared about the money, not for greed, but because Charlotte deserved compensation for what had been taken from her. She'd lost 3 years of her life, 3 years of career progression, 3 years of living. Money couldn't return those years, but it could provide security as she rebuilt. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Journalists camped outside our house, shouting questions whenever we appeared. But public opinion was firmly on Charlotte's side. She was the woman who wouldn't stay dead, the brave daughter who brought down a criminal empire. Strangers sent letters of support. A book publisher offered a substantial advance for her story. Sarah Chen visited often, becoming not just the journalist who'd broken the story, but a genuine friend. "You're both extraordinarily brave women," she told us over tea one afternoon. "Not just Charlotte for what she did, but you, Eleanor, for how you fought that night. Most people would have crumbled." "I'm a mother," I said simply. "I'd fight the devil himself for my daughter." As Christmas approached, Charlotte and I decorated the house together, something we hadn't done since before Thomas died. We hung lights in the windows, placed the old decorations on a small tree, baked the biscuits Thomas had always loved. On Christmas Eve, Jennifer Mitchell and her 3 children came for dinner. It had become important to both Charlotte and me to honor Sarah Mitchell's memory, to ensure that the homeless woman who died in Charlotte's place wasn't forgotten. Jennifer had been overwhelmed by Charlotte's generosity. She'd directed $100,000 of her reward money to Jennifer's family, calling it Sarah's legacy. "Your sister saved my life, even though she never knew it." Charlotte told Jennifer as we raised glasses in Sarah's memory. She deserves to be remembered as someone who mattered. The children, aged 7, 9, and 12, were fascinated by Charlotte's story, asking endless questions about hiding and adventures. Charlotte answered patiently, though I saw the pain in her eyes. Those hadn't been adventures, they'd been survival. Later, after Jennifer and the children left, Charlotte and I sat in the quiet living room, lights from the tree casting a warm glow. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Marcus?" I asked quietly. Charlotte considered the question. "No, but I don't need to forgive him to move on. He's in prison, his life destroyed. That's enough for me. I won't waste any more of my life on him, not even my anger. Your father would be so proud of you, not just for your bravery, but for your wisdom. I wish he could have known. I wish I could tell him I'm okay. He knows," I said with certainty. "Wherever he is, he knows, and he's proud beyond measure." On January 20th, 3 months after that midnight meeting in the Dover warehouse, Charlotte and I returned to St. Martin's Cemetery. The headstone with her name on it had been removed. She'd requested that. But we'd left fresh flowers in that spot anyway, with a small plaque reading, "In memory of Sarah Mitchell, whose life and death will not be forgotten." "Thank you, Sarah," Charlotte whispered, kneeling beside the flowers. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you, but I promise your death meant something. Your sister and her children will be cared for, and the men who killed you will spend their lives in prison." We stood there in companionable silence, mother and daughter, survivors of different but equally devastating losses. The winter sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the cemetery. "Ready to go home?" I asked finally. Charlotte smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen that reached her eyes since her return. "Yes, let's go home." As we walked back to the car, Charlotte's phone buzzed. She checked it and laughed. "Sarah Chen wants to know if we'll do an interview for the 1-year anniversary of the story. She says it's already being called one of the most significant investigative journalism pieces of the decade. What do you think?" "I think I'm tired of being the woman who rose from the dead. I just want to be Charlotte Whitaker again." She paused. "But maybe one more interview, to remind people that corruption can be fought, that victims can become survivors, that truth eventually wins. Then we'll do it together," I said, "just like we've done everything else." The trial, when it came that spring, resulted in convictions across the board. Marcus received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years. Graham Holloway got 25 years. The others received sentences ranging from 8 to 18 years. The judge's words at sentencing echoed in every news report. "You didn't just attempt to murder Charlotte Whitaker, you attempted to murder truth itself." Justice, though delayed, has prevailed. As Charlotte and I left the courthouse that day, surrounded by reporters and cameras, someone in the crowd shouted, "Charlotte, what do you want people to know?" She stopped, considered, then spoke clearly. "I want people to know that you can survive the unsurvivable, that evil doesn't always win, and that sometimes the people we think we've lost aren't as lost as we believe. Hold on to hope, fight for truth, and never ever underestimate a determined woman, especially if she's someone's mother or daughter." The crowd applauded. I squeezed Charlotte's hand, and we walked together into the sunshine of a future we'd both fought desperately to reclaim. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If this story moved you, please subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. It helps more people find these stories of courage and resilience. And I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. From Canterbury, England, to wherever you are in the world, may you always have the courage to fight for truth and the strength to survive whatever comes your way. Until the next story, stay brave.